In the last 10 years, there has been a resurgence of planning in the international arena. Planning was not seen as something very popular in the 90s, but since 2006, since the World Urban Forum that had a session focusing on reinventing planning, planning has been on the up because there was an agreement that planning had to reinvent its relevance, its focus, and its role in society. And we have come a long way over the last 10 years, especially with the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal 11 on making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable, which has at least 3 very strong targets related to planning, the planning capacity, public space, urban sprawl, and rural-urban linkages, which are all very important elements of the scale of planning. Also for the new urban agenda, the result of the Habitat 3 conference, planning is absolutely central as an important implementation mechanism for the new urban agenda. We are lucky to have some very good tools to help governments, to help local governments, to help professionals, civil society to take up their role in a revived planning situation. And one of these tools is the International Guidelines on Urban and Territorial Planning, which have been adopted by the Governing Council of UN Habitat in 2015. These guidelines are built around 12 principles about what constitutes a good set of urban and territorial planning structures, frameworks, and laws. And this is then accompanied by a number of recommendations for these different groups on how to use the guidelines. It has become the most popular, the most downloaded publication of UN Habitat ever, with more than 100,000 downloads from our website. It seems to be a very popular document that is usable and adaptable to different contexts. Since the Governing Council, we have been using these guidelines in different situations. We are encouraging local governments, we are encouraging professionals, we are encouraging different planning institutes to use them, to adapt them, to adopt them, and we're also having specific capacity development programs for countries related to these guidelines. I'll give you a few examples. And these examples are on the scale from awareness building to assessment and to trainings. We did some awareness building activities in Japan, Russia, Indonesia and Iran, for instance. You can see the diversity of context and the relevance, the universal relevance of these guidelines. We also use them as an assessment tool to assess the strength of planning frameworks, and we did that in Sri Lanka. And we also are applying the guidelines for different thematic areas, like for health, the linkage between urban and territorial planning and health. We're doing that together with different other organizations. And finally, we are using it as a training tool, for instance, for architects and mayors in Belarus. We would like to invite you all, as planning professionals, to join this global movement to promote the implementation of these guidelines on urban and territorial planning. We have already a number of projects ready or in the process of being prepared, such as the Compendium of Inspiring Practices, some learning materials, a handbook for localization, and a set of tools for monitoring indicators for the international guidelines. This is, of course, not Habitat's responsibility alone. This is a movement that we expect that all countries and all planning associations would find inspiration in. We would like you to share your collective knowledge on how to improve planning practices in your own countries and give feedback on the use of the guidelines to UN Habitat. We would like to hear your stories on how the guidelines can be used as a compass for change in your planning frameworks and practice. And finally, we would like you to mobilize other actors who might not have heard about these guidelines and popularize their use in the global arena.